This is Still Talking Black, a show about discussing issues about blackness from a black point of view. I'm your host, Richard Dodds, and this is episode 1 of season 2. I am so happy to be back and giving new episodes to everyone. As some of you can see, new episodes of season 2 are going to be available on YouTube. But if you like the audio version only, don't worry, it'll still be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. On this episode, I'm joined by Jennifer Ledwith of Scholar Ready. We discuss the best ways to get your kids into college, how they need to prepare, and try to do it by spending as least money as possible. Without any further ado, here we go.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ledwith of Scholar Ready, and I make grown men cry. For the past 18 or 19 years, I have prepared students for PSAT, SAT, ACT, and state standardized exams. I've also helped students to improve their literacy and their math skills in the classroom. The reason I say I make grown men cry is because I have had fathers, and of course I work close with mothers as well. And what's notable is that I've watched grown men witness their children achieve milestones academically that they did not believe that they could achieve. And when they did, they cried. So among all the wonderful things that I do for my students, I make grown men cry. How you doing, Richard?
Hey, I was not expecting the grown man cry thing. I was like, where are you going with this? Like, why are you making grown men cry? What are you doing? I was like, that just caught me off guard. I'm like, bro, I was like, why is she making grown men cry? What is she doing? What's she doing over there?
With my books. What can I do with a book?
Are you throwing books at men and making them cry?
Absolutely not. Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Oh, man. So when we start to think about like school readiness, like when kids are graduating from high school and they're preparing, what are some of the things that we're not doing to prepare our kids properly to be ready to go onto that next level, whatever that next level might be?
So we have to think about in whatever that next level may be after high school, whether it's, going to the military, going into the workforce, going to college, or, going to a trade school. We have to remember that that a degree or a trade certificate or experience in the military or even just that first job out of high school, those are tools. We have to remember that those are tools, are components of a larger plan. And what we need to do is sit down and think about, well, what's the end goal here? What career are you interested in? When we talk with kids, ask them what careers are they interested in and expose them to different careers and map out a journey to get there.
Do you think kids at that age really know what they want to do? Like, for instance, like when I was getting ready to go to college, like I was pretty much prepped, like you are going to college when you graduate from high school. That wasn't really even an option. It was like a foregone conclusion. But the other thing is that like my parents, like because of the things I like to do, it was pretty much thought that, all right, you're going into engineering. You're going to be a computer engineer. And I was in school for multiple years to be a computer engineer until I was like, no, this is not what I want to do. So like at that age, like you barely know who you are at that age. Like how can we like help prepare our kids for like a choice that, that's a big choice, like trying to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life at 18.
I would say it's important to expose students to different careers. For example, so with you having with your parents expecting you to expecting you to become a computer engineer, and then you pursued that, and you pursued it like, weren't you years into that degree?
I was years into that. I almost had that degree. I should probably go finish it. That's how close I was.
See, yeah. And I think what would be beneficial is to if you know that if engineering is on the horizon, or if your folks believe that, or parents believe that engineering or whatever career is on their students' horizon, they should have them go and participate in like maybe like a summer computer engineering camp or an engineering camp. Have them shadow an engineer during the day to get a feel for it. Another thing is you have these in various high schools. I know at least in Texas, where I am, we have career and technical education high schools and programs that are very robust. For example, I have a student who wants to pursue a career in medicine, and she is actually taking a class to learn to become an EMT. And look, when she goes through that program, either she's going to really, really like it, or she's not gonna like it. I mean, even if people want to become teachers, they need to go and experience the classroom and experience kids in the classroom. I remember I had a colleague who was the head of a college of education, and or the department of a college of education, and one of the interns said, "I don't like children." And I'm like, well, if you're trying to be a teacher, you have, okay. So then this is where, I mean, hopefully she decided not to pursue education and she went and did something else. But I think it's important to, if students have an inkling, if kids have an inkling of something they'd like to study, put them on a program to help them to understand that they want to do it. I know I had a friend who's very good. And often when we see students who are really good at math, parents will steer them toward engineering. And I had a friend of mine whose parents, said, okay, well, you like engineering? Go do a summer program. And he said that's the best thing he ever did, because he realized that he did not like engineering. and he actually went to college and studied finance. And he worked as a portfolio analyst for some time. And that's what we have to do. We have to really expose people, because that's serious. Like especially some degrees, and that's why it's important to have a plan. Because when you think about, like, for example, dentistry, people should shadow dentists and go to a summer program and get experience. There are missions trips where students can work in medical clinics. You don't have to leave. You don't have to go to, Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic to do those things. There are volunteer opportunities stateside that will allow a student to see what it's like to be a dentist. And then they can say, okay, this is what it's like to be a dentist. Okay, well, I really like this. Or they may say, oh, I don't like this. Because if you go to dental school and you rack up, what is it, like hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, how are you going to pay that off but be a dentist? So that's what I think. I think we really have to figure out ways to expose students to the practicalities of the careers that interest them.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I never had the opportunity. I don't even think that never even crossed my mind even now. Like, go shadow some engineers, see if you can do that type of stuff. I don't know how many of those opportunities are readily available. I feel like to the people that they usually are that kind of stuff, especially for those kind of careers that it is readily available for, they usually don't look like us. Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. So it's kind of like we're trying to figure it out as we go, which is kind of unfortunate. But I hope as a community continue to grow, it's a lot of Black engineers and scientists. And like if we can start to be able to get people in, and just that way of thinking, like that's just something I never even thought about. But like college is like so expensive now, you know what I mean? And the thing is that when I think about college, like I almost at a certain point, I have a hard time like recommending college to high school graduates, especially when they're unsure of what they're trying to do. And then even with that, it's like some parents prepare their kids to go into a field that they may not love, but will pay the bills. You know what I mean? So it's like a disconnect of do you go for something that you might not like, but it's going to get you financially where you want to go? Or do you pay the same amount of money sometimes, or a close amount of money to do something where you're not even going to make the amount of money that you paid to get the degree? Like where does that jive? So
it's kind of like, if there's not, it's like, well, can we really recommend someone spending $100,000 on an education and they might come out making, a small fraction of that in their first few years of their career. So I think that goes to, and there are a couple of books that I've read about applying to college. And there's one by Ron Lieber, and I think it's called What You'll Pay for the Price, or What You'll Pay for College. And then there's this other book by these two brothers about, and I wish I would have brought it in my office with me, but it's about advising African American families on helping their helping their children plan for college. And one of the things that they both have in common is people have to ask, well, why are you going to college? Why are you going to college? And I think what should really underscore the conversation. So here are the questions. Like, why are you going to college? Are you going to college because you're trying to get a well-paying job? Are you going to college because you want to make connections? Are you going to college because it's a social thing and it'll, because it looks good. Like, it looks good, your son has a degree in this from such and such colleges. Is that why the student is going to college? Or is a student just really going to college just to really just stretch his or her academic horizons? So everybody or maybe there's some other reason why the family is interested in their kiddo pursuing a college education. But one thing I learned a long time ago, so I have a background in financial planning, and then I've also worked with families in preparing their kiddos for exams and so forth, and tutoring for nearly 20 years now. And one thing I've learned is that I cannot argue with people's values. So, I can look at some situations and I can say, well, now I wouldn't do that. Like I would just, I can say, well, no, there's no way. But I learned a long time ago, I can't argue with people's values. So I've seen people send their students to college to major in things that they could have gone to college, like whatever they were doing, they could have done it more affordably in their home states. They could have, I've seen it to where it's a choice between free and, $200,000. And I've seen them bypass free and go to the $200,000. So for those people, you can't really argue with the values. For some people, how can you really, because we know that there are some professions that don't require education, where people in those professions are making more money than people with a college education. So that's why I say it has to be part of a plan. It has to be, these degrees, these certifications, the classes that students take in school. These are all tools, a part of a greater plan. And if really people just sit and just map it out and think about it, maybe a college education isn't appropriate for what that student is trying to do. But there has to be a plan. And sometimes people are like, I would say there may be some majors that aren't, we think about majors where people would think that they're going to make money. It would be, engineering, business, medicine, those fields. But if a student wants to pursue a major in, I'm going to just throw something out, journalism, that or philosophy or something like that. Students really need to have a plan. Okay, how are you going to use that journalism degree? You need to have internships throughout the summers. You need to figure out, talk with the student about, okay, if you get a journalism degree, this is what your first year is going to look like let's say you go, I have former students who are local television anchors for news stations in small to mid-sized TV markets. And that pay is low. It's low. It's low. It's low. It's low.
Your face said it all. I was like,
it's low starting out. So they need to, I think it's helpful if students, I would never discourage a student from pursuing a goal. I would just say, okay, well, now this is what this looks like. And like I tell my students, because I've had financial planning conversations with my students, and I tell them, I say, hey, you look like you like nice things. I know you like nice things. And that's okay. So, based on what you're trying to do, And, by the way, this is what your student loan payments are going to look like. Where do you plan to live? How do you plan to live? What do you plan to drive? And I think that's why I said, I think it's so important for us to really, sometimes we can get so caught up in, oh, you got to go to college because everybody else is going to college. Well, you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. Or you don't have to do something just because everyone else is doing it. We also get caught up in like, oh, well, if you go to college, then guaranteed, you're going to have like your life is going to be like worry free and you're not going to ever have to be poor and struggle and all that, which we know that is not, we
Can't
know
even
that's
guarantee a job out of college anymore.
No, you can't. So I think that's why I think it's important for us to really look at this as, okay, hey, maybe a college degree back in the day was a guarantee. Like, hey, if you have this degree, you can go, at least you can go and, teach, or you can go and do, you can go get a job as a, in a lab. But things aren't like that anymore. And that's why we have to really think about, look at the degrees as tools and not and not the whole plan. We have to have a whole plan where we really sit and talk and be intentional about what this all looks like and really talk about what the financial aspect looks like. And it's really, I know it's hard to discuss financial matters with people who've never paid as much as a water bill. So they don't understand that, like, their minds, they can't wrap their minds around like, okay, well, you have this student loan payment and it's $800 a month. They can't comprehend that. So I would advise parents to, I don't know what kind of conversations parents have about money. In my family, we grew up having very candid conversations with adults about money. I remember asking my mother for something and she was like, Jennifer, she said, Jennifer, this is, she said, Jennifer, this is how much I bring home every 2 weeks. And, my mother's a semi-retired math teacher. At the time, she was a whole full math teacher. And of course I tutor math. So, we're very good. We're both very good at math. And she was like, Jennifer, and she told me how much money she was bringing home every 2 weeks. She told me how much the bills were. She said, my mortgage is this, the light bill is this, this bill, the car note is this, all that. And when I heard that, and so she told me that, and I was like, okay, well, that means the answer is no.
The long answer to get to know, huh?
To know, yes, but I understood why it was no. And, I grew up with a lot, with women who were, who owned their own homes. Either they were divorced, widowed, or, never had been married, but they own their own homes. And so I would grow up among women who would talk about how much it would cost to get something repaired or have something maintained or so forth and so forth. So it was, and my grandfather, my grandfather would encourage me to, he encouraged my interest in the stock market. So I grew up in a family that talked about money and was very real about money. I know everybody else isn't like that. I had to kind of, so I'm a certified financial planner. And so I spent a few years in an office with a bunch of people who are financial advisors. And, we would sit in the office and just talk about our finances like it's nothing. And so I had to realize, Jennifer, you can't just ask people when you meet them if they have life insurance. You can't just ask them, so because I'm very...
That's a big one too.
Yeah.
Especially in our community.
Yeah. We have to be very candid about money and who's paying what, for that experience. Because a lot of times parents aren't, like, during the college application process, parents will tell their kids, oh, if you do well in school, then, you can go to whatever college you want to. And I think these parents make this promise to their kids, not having attended college for 30 years or 35 years and not realizing the costs.
Or at all.
Huh?
I said, or at all sometimes.
Or at all. And I think they think that because, I think and so they feel guilty because it's like, well, we promised you that you can go to whatever school you wanted to go to. And so now we have to make that happen. I've worked with parents who've done that. And I've observed parents. I had a parent call me one time. her daughter did very well on her entrance exams, and she was like, "But Jennifer, like, she's not getting any money." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean she's not getting any money? And any money offered to her?" And she was like, and I said, "Well, what schools is she applying to?" And then she said, "Oh, the California schools." And, and we're in Texas. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, what about the Texas schools? Oh, they all gave her money. And I'm like, well, and she was, but we told her that she could go to college in California if she did everything she was supposed to do. And I'm just like, and so that's kind of like, I mean, that's rough. Like, how do you tell a kid, like, I can't do, and so that's why it's just good to have conversations just from the beginning. Like, I had a family, and the dad was straight up from day one. He was straight up with his daughter from day one. And, he was like, "You're not going to that school because I don't care what you do, but in 2 years, I'm going to retire." And I don't care. He was like, "I don't care what you do." and she attended a less expensive university, and her loan, she may have had a few loans, but in low amounts, but she did okay. She came out better. So I think we have to really have that conversation about money, about who's paying for what, and just really think about it, because if you and that goes to your original question, how can we in good conscience ask high school graduates to go to college when they may pursue a degree? Forget about, are you going to go to the more expensive school or the less expensive school? It's your original question is, are we going to go to college at all? And that's why I think it's important to really talk with them and see what they want to do. Because if you have them, if they just go to college because someone told them to go to college, then they're not going to be serious. And I mean, they can, and and maybe they need to work for a little while to decide what they want to do. I've seen people work for a little while, and then they return, and then they go to school if they choose to go to school, and they do well. They're more serious and they do well. But we need to, I would say, if you're going to write a tuition check, if anyone is going to go to college, day one, they need to walk on campus with a plan. Now, is the plan going to change? Absolutely. But you need to have a plan, and you need to talk it out and think of other ways. The degree is just a tool. Are there other tools that can help that student reach his or her goals? I mean, and that's why, and often, like, and I know some people are like, "Oh, well, my teenager won't tell me anything, and they won't talk to me. They won't listen to me." Find other people in their lives that they'll listen to. Like, they are listening to someone, and not their little friends, but
not their little friends. Oh, boy.
but not because they're just as lost. But I would say the not their friends, but certainly their other teachers, mentors, family members that the students, that the kiddos respect. Have them talk to them to help them to find their way.
I think you said a lot in that answering that question. I think one of the biggest things that you said is like making a plan and knowing what you're gonna do with your degree. Because sometimes I feel like I've seen people go after a degree because they want to work a job, and then they realize in the middle of that degree that the degree that they're getting is not going to help you work that job. You don't even need this degree. I had a financial advisor on, and he was like, "You don't need a degree in finance to do this. You just need a certification." It's like, hold up, you mean I don't have to? Oh man. So it's so many times, like, when you say like make a plan, I feel like in our culture specifically, a lot of the people, when I was in school, a lot of people that I seen with the plans did not look like me. They had plans down to the T. They knew what they were going to do. They knew what their degree was. They weren't messing around. They weren't going to Discover. They came in to get their degree. They graduated. They worked for this company, this company, this company. And even you talking about like the people in the newsroom. It's like the small newsroom. Like if you have a plan, you can work in a small newsroom for 3 to 5 years. And then like, all right, now I have something to go pitch to a big network or something, or I learned the skills that I need to be a producer. Now my pay is going from maybe like 40,000 to 80,000. It's just like having that plan just like really puts you in such a different position. And I think it's so important to talk about it like earlier, especially in our community, and actually have community where it's like, even though like I think I talked about it before, like my parents knew I was going to college, but they really didn't know how to prepare me to go to college. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really know what to expect. There wasn't anybody I could talk to like, hey, what's college like? You know what I mean? It's like you go and you figure it out. And that's that kind of cultural knowledge that we lose that other like cultures tend to have, to where this is what college is like. I know you're going to get distracted. I know you're going to party, but this, and you want to do this. And we miss a lot of that. And I just feel like we as a community need to work harder and getting that back and properly preparing. Because it's like, even hearing you talk about it, and I've been out of school for a long time, it just seems like whoa, like have a plan? Wow. Like that's crazy. Like a plan? That's great. But yeah, so like a lot of that stuff you said, like I totally am with you. And a lot of times, sometimes you don't even need a degree, and you spend 60, 70, 80 grand on a degree, and then you say, oh, I want to write for a blog. And it's like, oh, you didn't need that degree, huh?
Yeah, I would say that a part of the plan, because you said they were, because you talked about the advisor who realized that they didn't have to study finance. And you talked about how, the people you had gone to school with who don't look like us had a plan, and they went in, they had a plan, they went in and got their degree and move. And then even like, if you do go work in a newsroom, like, okay, well, I can stay here for 3 to 5 years and I picked up these skills and then I can move on and do this next thing. That's why it's so important to have a plan. But also I would say, if you have a degree, often people have these arguments about which is better, a trade or a degree. And why not both? Why can't you do both? Why, if you're able to do both, do both. And so that's why we have to really think about stuff. But I think also we have to remember that we have to be intentional about these things. Thank you. That just because our kiddos are going to maybe a private school or a school in an affluent neighborhood, we have to understand that that's not enough. Like it's not enough for, sometimes we think that just because that school name is on that diploma, or just because we go to a school with more resources than schools that, are like a Title I school, parents might think, okay, well, they're going to have it made. All I have to do is just, drop them off and they're going to do just as well as their white counterparts, which is not the case, because what they don't realize is that their white counterparts are hiring me, because these people have tutors and they're not going to tell you. And they probably have college I'm not a college consultant. I don't advise people on degrees and schools and so forth. I create the conditions to help them to be able to realize those aspirations. But I don't advise in that way. But people have college advisors as well. And so we have to be very intentional about very intentional through the whole educational process. When the child starts, before that child is in kindergarten, we have to be very intentional about, of course we want to be intentional about school selection, but we want to be intentional about the education that the student is getting and what kind of opportunities that student might be exposed to.
Yeah, I love that word intentional, because I was speaking about it like actually earlier today, thinking about in my career how it's times where I haven't been intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And just being intentional about the skills that you want to learn and the things that you take away can keep you from working in the same position for 10 years versus working in a position for 2 years and then getting elevated to another position and then learning what you need to do there for 3 years and then getting elevated to another position. So I love intentionality, especially when it comes to that. This is a question that you've heard me ask before.
Okay.
And I'm very curious to get your take on it.
Okay.
Because I talked about it on another episode. When I bought my house,
Okay.
I had to take a class
Okay.
to learn about mortgages.
Yes.
Now, we have 18-year-old kids who probably ain't never had a credit card. You talked about never paying a bill, signing up to possibly take out a student loan that at the end of the day is probably going to be as much as the first house I purchased.
Right.
So should there be a class for people who are considering going to college and take before they get that student loan? Should we be putting them in class? Because like back in the day, like we were told, like my dream was like, oh, everything I heard growing up, you go to school, you get your degree, you get out, your life is great, you got a job, you're gonna get paid 20 times more than, like, that's what I was told, like straight up, like that was the narrative. Go to school, get an education, get a good job, you get a pension, you retire, and you it ain't like that no more.
No, it's not.
So student loans is far less of a guarantee. So with that risk involved, do 18-year-old students, before they sign that student loan paper, should they need to take financial classes so that they properly understand what they're getting themselves into?
They need to take classes, not just financially. They need to take classes on, the academic demands and the social demands of college. Because because if you can get that academic and that social piece right, you might not be there as long as and then you can save money. So to your point, when you buy a house, you had to take a class. And another thing that's interesting when we buy houses, we think about all the professionals we have to enlist before we can get to that closing table. We have to have an inspector. We have to have an appraiser. They have to have this. You have to have somebody come out and do a survey. A title company is involved, and then we have the mortgage broker, the mortgage company. We have the realtor. I know, and then the people who teach the home buying education classes, and I know I'm missing some other folks in there, and to get to that the closing table. Yeah, I think, when I think about my home, I'm sure that I have students whose college educations, the cost of their college educations, are eclipsing what my home costs. We do. We need to have we need to have honest conversations and honest classes with students about what it takes to go to college and really about the financial aspect. There's a thing I used to an event I participated in Houston called Money Live. And at Money Live was a real world money simulation. And students would choose their educations, their loans, the car they were driving, where they lived, and that helped them to have an understanding of what that money was like. Because from what I've observed about my students, many of my students are very tight when it comes to their own money. They are willing to spend left and right when it comes to their parents' money, but let those students get a job, and they are extra tight with their money, and that's what we have to. So if we were to think about what that would look like, we need to have them. And in fact, I participated in this. I actually helped write this program for an organization called Skills for Living. And it was a real world program. And we had them choose careers and, educations and, and then where they were living. It was a similar thing with Money Live, but this particular event was was a class. It was a summer long class. And we also introduced the idea of income taxes. And that's what, we need to have that. We need to have them, we need to have them go through and learn, begin with the end in mind. Okay, so if you say you want to pursue this kind of profession, then then this is what this looks like financially. And okay, and these are your income taxes. And after you pay your income taxes, these are your bills. And oh, this is the school you wanted to attend. Okay, so this is so because because you didn't because of whatever. Maybe you had a scholarship, maybe you didn't. But this is how much you're going to pay, and this is what your life is going to look like. We need to have them, and then we need to say, okay, well, now what are some things you can do to improve your financial situation? What are some things you can do at age 15 to help improve your life when you're 25 years of age? And then I think that's when we need to talk with them about, okay, well, here's some things you can do if you want to go to college to defray the cost of college. There's dual credit, there are advanced placement classes, there are, there are scholarships. Okay, so what do you have to do to get these scholarships? And so we have people, because what I'm having a hard time with this summer is, or even just, I would say like, post-COVID, or not post, the onset of the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. I am struggling with helping my students to understand that what has helped them to be successful in high school will not help them to be successful in college because their grades do not reflect what they really know. And there have been studies that say that, we know that we have in America, we have a small percentage of students who are reading at or above grade level. We have a small percentage of students. It's not even, I have to look at the numbers. You can look at the America's Report card and pull those numbers. But I know in Texas, it's like maybe 20%, maybe it's low. It's not even 50% reading at or above grade level. Same thing with math. They're not where they should be with math. The current class that I think it's class of 2026 maybe in Texas, over half of them, when they took the U.S. history, the state exam for their U.S. history in the 8th grade, over half of them failed that exam. So yeah, so we know these numbers, but no parent believes that their child is in that number. And there's this big disconnect when they get ready to take these. Look, we talk about finances and a big way to help pay for college. A big way is still, these schools are still giving money based on test scores. They're giving money based on class rank, GPA, activities, things are kind of a little more holistic now, but these schools are still relying on these test scores. And I mean, the thing is, the tests have not changed, but the students have changed. And it's taking longer to prepare students for exams. It's taking longer, and it's taking more examples. It's just taking more to prepare them. So we really need to, Richard, get real with what are the financial demands and then what are the academic requirements, because you can go to college and if you're like a great reader, you can do anything. You can get a scholarship, and then, you may not be able to pay for everything, but you won't have as much as student loans. Consequently, you have students who are starting college who are not academically prepared, and their schools are not being honest with them about the lack of preparedness. And so the students will go to college and then they may not complete their degree. And so they graduate they leave with all their student loan debt, but they don't have a certificate or a degree. So they're going to have to go get a low wage job, and they have a low wage job, but they have like a mountain of student loan debt. What is this?
Yeah.
So we have to look at, when we're planning for college, yes, there should be a class on what the finances look like. Absolutely. There also needs to be a class on what are the academic requirements. And then also there needs to be a class on your social life and your socialization, because many students, having gone through the pandemic, and so much of their lives center around social media, that they have a hard time. They struggle with interpersonal skills. And that's such a big part of college. And somebody needs to teach them those things. We can't get mad at students for not knowing what they haven't been taught.
Yeah.
And so so when you talk about, hey, we need to have a class that, hey, when you buy that house, you have all these professionals. When you go to college, you need to have all these professionals, not just your parents as a guide, because teens, hey, if they were anything like me, I wouldn't try and listen to my mama when I was their age. Okay. Even though my mother went to college and right. So, we need to think about a plan financially. We need to think about a plan like academically, like socially and, interpersonally. And then we also, and what should drive that plan? What should drive that instruction is, why are you going to college? What do you want to do with your life after high school? Because it may not even be necessary to go to college.
Yeah, I remember I had someone ex's mother. She wanted me to go back and get a master's degree just for like continue your education. You could also network. I'm like, I can network for not paying $120,000 to go get a master's degree. Like, I guarantee you, there's other ways to network. But once you have that money, once you have your why and you know that you want to go to school, now it's a little bit harder, right, for minorities to get into school because, the Supreme Court just struck down affirmative action. What are some things that our kids can do to help increase their chances of getting into a good school? What are their options now?
So when they think about a good school, you have to ask, why is the school good? And for whom is the school good? And, so when we talk about, so sometimes, people will look at schools and they'll say, oh, well, this school is number one based on U.S. News World Report. This school is this school is a top 8 school. And it's like, okay, well now, why is it a top 8 school? Okay, well, it's because it's very selective. It, has a low acceptance rate. It also may have a large number, a great amount of alumni giving. It may also have students. The students in that class may have all those students may have really high statistics, like high GPA, high class rank, high test scores. So that those schools may be ranked, in something like U.S. News and World Report, number 5 or number 10, or, they're ranked highly because of things that have nothing to do with why that student wants to go to college. So when we talk about a good school or a top school, you need to think about, why is this school good for me? So that's number one. So when we talk about students getting into top schools, we really need to, so especially with the affirmative action being struck down. So affirmative action, as far as I understand, hadn't been administered. Like when we think of affirmative action, people of color getting more preferential treatment in the admissions process. It hasn't been in effect in like California in a while. I don't think it's been in effect at the university from which I graduated, or even some of these schools in Texas. So it's not, let's be clear, this is a sweeping case and it's going to affect large numbers of students, and it's even going to spill into corporate America and, other aspects of our society.
It's spilling into corporate America already.
Oh, wow. What have you seen?
Law firms. Like, I've seen some law firms get pushed back because of programs that they have that are selective for minorities. And they're saying, like, no, that's not right. You can't do that. You can't. So it's already starting to spill in.
Oh, wow. So, So we have to make sure. So because of that,
that's a lot, right? It's just, it's heavy.
It is a lot. And I would say, well, Black people should go to law school and start their own law firms. But I fully recognize that entrepreneurship is not for everyone.
It is not for everybody. That's very true.
It is not for everyone. It is not for everyone. So when
hustle
people
culture.
It's not. Yeah. And when people say, we got to own our own businesses. And I'm like, yeah, but Yeah, but it's a. I mean, it's not for everyone. No matter what your cultural background is, it's not for everyone. I would say that when we talk about getting into good schools, we have to think of students again. They need to go back to that plan. What is the school that's going to help me to reach my goals? And start researching early. What are their requirements? What are these schools looking for? And really, I mean, I would say if parents don't know, or if students don't know exactly what they want to do, or parents are like, well, I don't know what my child wants to do. What they can do that will help them to be successful, no matter what they decide, now or later on, is that they are strong readers. If you can read, you can do anything. If you can read, you can do anything. And
not if they ban the books we should be reading, but that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole nother story. But you know what's so crazy? There is. I mean, book banning, of course, is an issue. Like, I couldn't imagine not being it, because those books that are on that list are books that I've read when I was a kid. Yeah. But the thing is, many of our kids don't understand what they're reading, period. That's right. And parents have to, if your student, no matter what your student decides, if they can read, they can do anything. So when it comes to getting into a good college, or the college that is good for them, they need to look at the requirements, and they need to research, like, okay, well, how much is this going to cost? How do we pay for this? Are there scholarships? Are there ways to, how can we make this happen? And really, schools are still looking at, so when we look at schools are still considering class rank. They're considering grade point average. They're also considering the rigor of a student's coursework. Don't get it twisted. Everybody knows that a number one in the student who graduates at the top of his or her class at one school can have a radically different educational experience from a valedictorian at another school. Mm-hmm. And we have to make sure that students have to take rigorous courses. And, look, these colleges know what high schools are offering. These high schools know, these colleges know which high schools are producing students who are academically prepared for college. If you want to know what schools produce students ready for college, go to their college nights. Look at the colleges that are there at the college nights. I had a friend who's a recruiter tell me this. We went to this. I was volunteering as an alumna to help recruit for my university, and that's what he told me. He said, "Look at the school." And we were at this one school. It's a medical magnet school here in the Houston area, or here in Houston, and multiple Ivy League schools were there striving to recruit. But then you have other schools, like I've been to other college fairs in areas that are, affluent, and public schools. And I'm looking at these schools, and they're not Ivy League schools. And, in fact, and I'm not casting aspersions on the military, but there was a military there, not military academies, which that's a whole nother, getting into the military academies. That's like having an Ivy League education. It's the rigor of the school. So how do students get into top colleges? They need to take as rigorous of a course load as they can take. They need to get at the highest grades they can get and have highest class rank they can get. Now, here's the thing. There still has to be a balance. There still has to be a balance. Students need to be able to be kids and enjoy school and enjoy their lives and their families and their friends. So I'm not a believer in students taking like all advanced classes. I think that's too much, but some students can handle it. I think students need to take what they can handle. So you have the classes, the grades, the class rank. Students also need to prepare for PSAT, SAT, ACT, and they need to take those exams seriously. That's a component of college admissions and college scholarships. So that's the academic bucket. Then we go to the activities bucket with leadership. Students need to have, participate in activities where they can take the lead in certain clubs, certain activities. And then they also should be doing community service. And if they can work, that'd be great as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that you got to do in order to get ready for college. And when I graduated from high school, I applied to one college. I kind of I'm going to one school and one school only. And like in retrospect, I was probably really, really dumb. I knew my grades were good. And I knew I had like that last year of school. I was like, "Oh crap! I need to join some clubs and stuff And I kind of knew that, but I kind of really just threw my cards on the table. Like, I just want to go to this one school. Thankfully, I got in, but that's probably not the best way to go about it. And to be honest, the next thing I wanted to ask you about, if I was going back to being 18 years old again, and I was considering going to college, something that I did not consider. And I didn't even go on a tour because a lot of people I had seen people go on a tour. So I would have considered a HBCU. I really didn't understand the significance of HBCUs when I was considering colleges. And now, especially with everything that's going on, what do kids need to understand in considering a HBCU?
All right, so I'm glad you asked that. I'm working with a colleague to put on a mock admissions event, and we're going to invite HBCUs, so historically Black college and universities. We're going to invite representatives from those universities, and we're also going to invite representatives from PWIs, our predominantly white institutions. Our students need to understand that HBCUs there's a rich tradition of rich culture from HBCUs. I did not go to an HBCU. I graduated from a PWI. But if it had not been for HBCUs, I would not have graduated from a PWI because my grandparents graduated from HBCUs. My mother, my aunts, so many of my relatives graduated from HBCUs. And I mean, in fact, the first time I ever went on a college campus and had someone move in, it was at an HBCU. So it was, but I do know that if it wasn't for the foundations and the educations that they got from those HBCUs, I wouldn't have gone to. I wouldn't have gone to college because, I had, at a HB, I would say that students need to Black students need to look into HBCUs and look at what they have to offer. Again, think about, what do you want to major in? What do you want to study? Because those professors, when I went to a PWI, now let me be clear, I had professors who cared about me, but I don't feel like I had a professor who cared about me until maybe the end of my second year in college. But my sister started out at an HBCU and she missed class one day, and the professor was like, "Where were you? Where were you, Miss Ledwith? We missed you." I never got that at I knew.
I can't even imagine that. Like at college, someone saying like you weren't here. That's wild.
Yes. So it's sometimes people, I'll say that. I'll talk about Xavier. Xavier has a program, Tiny Xavier University in New Orleans is number one. It is the number one college in sending African-American students to medical school. And they are so, again, intentional. The word of the day is intentional. Xavier is so intentional about helping those students. Maybe they have some academic gaps, and they help those students, hang on until they can hold on. And ultimately, they're able to be successful. They have programs. I mean, HBCUs are those professors are there and they want you to be successful. So they have programs to help the students be successful. When you go to these PWIs, particularly large PWIs, we have weed out courses. And they will tell you, like, if you can't make it in, whatever it is, biology 1 or calculus or what have you, then, this STEM field isn't for you. And I just remember at my PWI, we had students who were top. They went to a specialized engineering high school. And they went to, I think it was like 7 of them that started with me. And only one of them graduated with a degree in engineering. Whoa. And that young lady actually went on to pursue a degree in law. So she's actually a lawyer now.
That's such a shift.
It is. But I went to high school with people who were, average students, and they went and studied engineering at, I know, at least one HBCU, and they're practicing engineers now. And so I would say that HBCUs are, aside from the, it's just like, it's just Black everything, which is awesome.
It's beautiful.
Yes. The academic aspect, is, the environment is more nurturing. Now, I mean, are there some administrative issues? Yes. Are there some administrative issues that students are going to experience at an HBCU that they probably won't experience at an PWI? Probably. But yeah, maybe. But I would tell them to give HBCUs a serious look, because they want you to be successful. And when those companies come to recruit at an HBCU, they are looking to hire African American applicants, the graduates. But when you go to PWIs, those recruiters are not going there to recruit African Americans, because I remember having a job interview. And, it was over the phone, and this is before social media and everything. Right. And I was on the phone with my white voice and in the pre-interview. And then I showed up to the interview, and I have always looked like this. I have always been Black. And
your whole life?
Yeah. and their faces just dropped. Their faces dropped when I walked in there. So I don't think that applicants are going to experience that at a HBCU, because those corporations know who they're looking for. So I would definitely say, look at the HBCUs. When they have college tours, go see the college tours. Sometimes my students get hung up with, this campus is like, it's not as shiny, like the dorms aren't as new and da 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 da. I get that. But, really look at the academics, look at the supports for the students, because that's going to make a bigger difference than whether you have a brand new, recreational center on campus.
Yeah, the school that I finished my degree in, my bachelor's degree in, when I left, a lot of that money that I was paying went to new facilities, and it looks like a completely different school now. I didn't get to enjoy any of that stuff, but that's a whole nother subject. But I went to a PWI, and the thing that I do appreciate about being at a PWI is that, I mean, I don't know if it would even be considered a PWI. It was just a melting pot. It was like a little bit of everything there, and as someone who I grew up around a lot of different cultures, like I didn't think about it as much, because I was like, I'm used to this. Like, it's different cultures, of course.
Yeah.
But I think and I wonder where the balance is, just because, like, I've talked to people, and it had never crossed my mind until I was interviewing somebody, and he said he went to college, and for the first time it was like a mix of people, and he was like, he had never really been around white people. And I never thought about that from a Black point of view, like not being around white people, because I've been around everybody. So like thinking about going to like a PWI, if you've never been, like being able to interact with the rest of like what other parts of society looks like, learning how to move, learning how things work. I think that's very important. But at the same time, like I'm saying, like if I could go back in history, I don't know. I would probably be on a drum line or something. Be at the halftime shows. Like, I don't know. I hope when I have kids and they ready to go to school, that one of them want to go to an HBCU, so I can just be like, yeah, baby, just be proud. Like, yeah, let's do it. Like, you living daddy's dream now.
And they go, and their friends gonna be like. Their friends are gonna be like, is that your dad?
I'm gonna have the shirt on, like the big sweatshirts, like, yeah, I'm here, like proud HBCU dad. Like, that's gonna be me. That could be my future. I don't know.
I think that's awesome. I think they need to explore it, even though they, now you do have some people who look down on, you do have folks who look down on HBCUs. You have Black people who look down on HBCUs, thinking, oh, those are just party schools and da, da, da. Every school can be a party school.
Every school is a party school.
Every school is a party school. And, I often find that people who look down on HBCUs, they probably didn't go to college. So I would be, that's what I observe because the Black people I know and I'm in the South. So many of the Black people I know who are educated were educated at HBCUs. So I think they're worth, I think it's worth looking at them. And again, going back to what that family values, what that family wants from a college education, and just going, because sometimes students get so, it's easy for students to get so caught up in what their neighbor's doing. Like, people will call me and they'll say, oh, well, I want you to, prepare Johnny for this test. And I'm like, oh, well, how'd you find out about me? Oh, well, the neighbor, you prepared the neighbor for the test and he scored this. And so I'm expecting the same for Johnny. And then I work with Johnny and I'm like, it ain't no way. Johnny is not giving everything that he needs to give, like the neighbor did. So I say that to say that people have to be honest, about what they want, not what your neighbor wants. Like, what people have to, so a lot of times in schools, when you have students who go to, you have Black kids who go to schools that, are predominantly, it's not a lot of us there. They may be the only, they may be the only ones there.
Yeah.
They may have, a lot of times they'll be like, ooh, why do you want to go to that school? And da, 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 and they have to be very strong within themselves and say, well, there's value in going to school with people who look like me. I'm not saying that they should rule out a PWI, but I'm saying that, they have to go back to, okay, what's the plan? Why do we want to go to, why do we want to go to college, and adhere to that and not worry about what everybody else is doing.
I think that's so well said. Like, you just really, everything you've taken it from a holistic point of view. Before we close this down, I want to talk a little bit about your company, Scholar Ready. What made you start that?
Okay, so I graduated from the time I was a junior in high school to the time I was a junior in college. I applied for over 30 scholarships. And I graduated from college, consequently, I graduated from college with only $1,000 in student loan debt.
Ooh.
My education at the time, the sticker price. So I was an out-of-state student because I was like, I'm getting away. I was like, I've been going to the same school with these same people for 12 years. I want to get away. And as soon as I bought a house like right behind my own middle school. So there you go.
Funny.
Oh, there you go.
Went away to come back.
Went away to come back.
I missed you guys. It's not that good over there.
Went away to come back. And so I said, and I knew I wanted to go away. I knew the only way I was going to be able to go away to school is if I applied for I earned scholarships because my mother made, at the time she was a single parent, and she made too much money to qualify for, and she wasn't getting child support, and she made too much money to qualify for financial aid and not enough money to write 2 checks to college because I have a twin sister. So I applied. What worked for me is that I'm incredibly persistent. I am incredibly persistent, very
Yes, you are.
persistent. I'm very persistent. And I would write essays, and I'm a very good writer. But I work at it. And also I had good test scores. And so I just applied and applied and applied, and my parents didn't pay for me to go to school. I didn't have an athletic scholarship. I am more mathlete than athlete any day of the week. And so I graduated with only $1,000 in student loan debt. And look, Richard, the reason I had student loan debt is because I wanted to buy plane tickets. Not even, it wasn't even related to finding a job. It was because I had a boyfriend, and I wanted to fly. I was done riding a bus. So that's why I had $1,000 in student loans. I tell my students not to do that, but hey,
I hope it was worth it.
It was worth it in life lessons. It was worth it. It was worth it.
Okay. All right.
Life lessons. It was worth it in that aspect. But and when I thought, I didn't realize how odd that was to graduate, to have an education with a price of $64,000. And graduate with and not even needing student loans. I need those loans. So I decided to start a company to help my students to do the same thing I did. So I started with I said I want to help students write essays. And then what I realized is that, but then I told my auntie I'm starting a business. I'm gonna be tutoring, and I'm gonna be preparing students for college. And all she heard was tutoring. And she told her coworker's daughter, she told her coworker, "Oh, my little niece is tutoring. You need help with math? Oh yeah, call my niece." I had never planned on tutoring math, never. But I've been doing algebra. At that point, I had been doing algebra every year of my life since I started taking algebra. And I tutored her, and she did really well. She was one of the few students in her freshman class to pass her state math assessment that year. And so I just started working more with math. And then I started realizing that my students, I started realizing that exams were a gateway to scholarships. It was a gateway for me. And so I started preparing students for exams. And then eventually the essay writing business started coming. And in my essay writing class, I'm so proud of my students from the essay writing class. I had 2 students to graduate in 2021, and they're on full rides to a school here in Houston, full academic rides. I've had other students get I've had students score perfect scores on the math sections of the SAT. One of those students is at Fordham University in New York on a full ride. Her sister, who I tutored in math, is at Princeton. I prepared both of them for math SAT. So I've been able to, it's just so, and it's the work is hard, and it's getting harder because they don't have what they need because of the learning disruptions from COVID. And it's also hard because I'm having to explain to them, they're like, "Miss Jennifer, I don't understand." They really do not understand why just showing up and breathing is not enough. And I have to push them, and I have to push them harder, and I have to hold their hands a little more because they're used to just showing up and being polite and breathing and getting a grade. And I'm like, "Now look, your parents have hired me to do a job. They've hired me to produce some results. So we have to do this until it's done." But then, and sometimes I'll get at the end of a very long stretch of working with students, like maybe the end of a semester or something, and I'll say, "Whew, I'm a certified financial planner. Maybe I should just do more of that." And then I get these phone calls, and they're like, "Miss Jennifer, I got this scholarship. Miss Jennifer, I have this test score." And I'm like, "All right, I'll do it again." And so here I am.
You stuck.
And here I am, 18, 19 years in. And it's just, it's so gratifying. It's very hard work. I started working with middle school students and helping them with their literacy and their math skills, because I look at what worked for me, I look at what worked for my students who were able to, who are doing well. And the main thing is that we're all readers. We're strong readers. And if you can read, you can do anything. And that's where I am in my career. I'm striving to push these kids to be better readers and better writers, because even when, like you said, you go to college, get your degree, life is going to work out. It's going to work out. But the lies. And, people, well-meaning lies. And, but, Richard, the thing about reading is that when students can read and absorb and understand information for themselves, they can do things that people told them that they couldn't do. And I know that that's been my case. And I know I've experienced that before. And, what's the point of an education? Why, most parents want their children to do better than they did. And as Black people, I would think that would be about attaining a greater degree of freedom. And the freedom comes through reading, because when you can read, you can do anything.
That's so beautiful. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me at Still Talking Black. Thank you for having me.
Again, I would like to thank Jennifer for coming on the show. If you'd like to find out more information about her or her company, Scholar Ready, that information will be available in the show notes. Still Talking Black is a Crown Culture Media LLC production. If you want to find out more about the show, you can find that at stilltalkingblack.com. New episodes will be available on streaming on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Season 1 is still up and available on any of the streaming podcast platforms that they were previously. I'm planning on coming out with these weekly, so I hope to see you right here, wherever you listen, wherever you watch, next week. But until then, keep talking.